I live in the town where Dolly Parton grew up, and practically everyone above the age of 50 who grew up here claims to either be a distant relative of Dolly's, or they claim to know her in some way. Everyone has their story of the time they met Dolly. It's pretty obvious. But regardless of who you talk to, Dolly has always been sweet and generous. But everything has simply grown exponentially due to her fame. Examples are the millions of books she gives out for free to children around the globe each month. Or how she gave out $10,000 cash to many of my close friends after their houses burned in a fire a couple years back. Thousands of people are employed here and work for one of the businesses she owns. And it's a tad strange to see when you walk in. But the birthing center at the local hospital is funded by and named after her. I honestly can't think of one person I know who doesn't like her. Dolly's heart has only gotten bigger because of fame. My grandmother worked at Dollywood for many years and met Dolly a handful of times. When she died, Dolly sent 24 or so roses to the funeral home. She's a real gem. Today on r/AskReddit, people of Reddit are new celebrities before they were famous. How different do they act now? I went to school with Rupert Grint, Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. I was into acting too, so we had done a few school plays together. He was really nice, very chill, a good laugh. I haven't seen him since school days, but he kept coming to classes whenever he wasn't filming. Was always happy to chat about the movies. Sometimes he'd need a little break from so many people wanting to talk, and would come and hang out in the library. And honestly, you'd never know he was in the biggest film series at the time. Honestly, I think a lot of these answers boil down to if they want fame or not. Rupert loved what he was doing, but didn't care about being famous and having people kiss his ass. Just a nice normal kid. And then it transpires to the kid who, as a normal kid, would think ice cream is really cool. Would one day share ice cream with people for free with the money he made. I wonder what happened to that ice cream truck. Does he still have and/or use it? Did he sell it? Does someone have an ice cream truck where they keep a photo of them shaking his hand to prove it's the one he owned? Does Rupert Grint know how funny his last name sounds backwards? Who knows? Technology himself may never even realize it. Or wholesome. A friend of mine is buddies with Paul Rudd. Says he's exactly the same and a great human. Exactly the same, because he hasn't aged at all in like 20 years. Jack Black is the same person he was as a teenager. Funny, kind, caring, and spreading that joy of music. Fun fact. I put wires up my sleeve and I wanted the wires just to peek out a little bit so that if any kids noticed my wires I would say, "It's nothing. It's nothing." They would think I was bionic. Because my logic was that I was trying to hide my bionics from them. What guy? Jack Black seems like a wonderful man. He did the morning announcements at my high school when my brother went there. Bernie will always be one of my favorite movies. My grandpa, RIP, owned a grocery store in Miami in the late 70s. Wesley Snipes and his friends once stole some candy from his store, and when he caught them, he let them have it. Since then Wesley and his friends were regulars. Once, Wesley left his bike in front of the store, and it got stolen. Was a pretty bad area. My grandpa gave him his old bike that he kept in the back of the store. My uncle took over in 2001 when my grandpa died. In 2007 he came back to the store while my uncle and cousin were there to ask about my grandpa. My uncle said they talked for a little over an hour about how my grandpa treated him like a son. When he found out my grandpa passed he felt guilty he didn't visit sooner. He embraced my uncle and cousin and left. My uncle said he told him they plan on having the building repainted while they talked. About a week later a crew of painters arrived and told my uncle they were already paid to have the building repainted. Such a genuine dude. Edit. Sorry I haven't been able to reply to everyone, but thank you guys so much for love. Even though has often portrayed negatively. Glad to see that people still try to find the best in us. Even it's a small gesture. This is awesome. You hear so much about how disconnected he is and just smokes a ton, but it's nice to hear he remembers those who helped him in the past. My grandfather taught Jack Nicholson in high school math class. Said he was rebellious, but wasn't too bad at math. I had a friend in high school whose cousin is Kendrick Lamar. He said Kendrick's pretty much still the same guy. Acts the same around friends and family. Just with millions of dollars now. My aunt was best friends with Madonna in high school, stayed friends until she got famous, and she turned into a completely different person in the worst way possible. So you'll say your aunt knew her pre-Madonna and pre-Primadonna Madonna? My coworker's dad grew up with Queen Latifah in North Jersey. His whole family loves her because they were about to lose their house. So she paid it off for them. Queen Latifah, if this gets back to you, thanks for what you did for your friends in NJ. Phil's a really cool guy. People laugh when I tell them she's my #1 celebrity crush. My wife is a very petite Caucasian blonde and she always jokes that I went the exact opposite direction. I can't remember before my aunt was famous. Alex Kingston played River Song in Doctor Who, but I remember going to her wedding and meeting Matt Smith, who played the Doctor in Doctor Who, and him fixing my flip-flop. The best moment of my life ever. This is one of those threads I wish I could tell the serious ones and the trolls apart. I was once best friends with Elvis until he got famous. He still visits me from time to time. I wish I know some of these celebrities. Tyler the Creator, exactly the same. We were all concerned at how bizarre he was. He would call people a table or something incredibly random, and the sense of humor caught on in my high school. The fame did nothing. Has still strange and a sweetheart. Heather, I love it. Hey you duckin' table. He's so odd in the best way. Only person to match Eric Andre on his show. My dad was good friends with Will Smith before the Fresh Prince days. Will actually showed him the pilot before it aired. Fast forward however many years to After Earth, and Will invited us on the set. His first words when he saw my dad 10 plus years later was, "The Philly crew is back." Edit. Thanks for all the love. This is the most upvotes I've ever gotten. #INTERNETFAME. Edit 2. My dad also did all of the work on Will Smith's and Jazzy Jeff's cars back in the day. Had a little too much fun in Will's Jeep and flipped it on its roof. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Bruno Mars' mom was a bartender at a local karaoke dive bar that I was a regular at the time. His biggest hit was The Hook for Billionaire by Travie McCoy. Anyway, she was selling tickets for an upcoming concert he was having, and she asked our table if we wanted to buy some. My friend declined, and she exclaimed, "Why not? He's my son." I ended up getting a couple of tickets despite not knowing any of Bruno Mars songs. It turned out to be one of the best concerts I've ever been to. The guy knows how to put on a good live show. The tickets were only $40 each, I think. His opening act was a local group of large Polynesian men singing Motown who went by the name Nesian 9. They were pretty good too. The next time he was in town for a concert, he had blown up and the tickets were going for $400. I would have loved to see him again, but not at that price. His mom was really nice, down to earth, and a pretty good singer herself. R.I.P. Bernie. At least she lived long enough to see her son's success. The whole family sings. I went to school with his sister Presley, and I remember wondering what she's up to. Found out her and the sisters of the fam started a girl group. I probably looked this up 5+ years ago, so IDK what she's doing now though. Went to middle school with Megan Fox for a bit. She rode my bus and she mostly kept to herself. Most of the guys would fight over who was going to sit next to her, but she was very shy and didn't really have much to say. My mom knew Seal as far back as when he was still trying to be an architect, and she says he was always really nice. They didn't stay in touch. She moved away and they were never close, but she said he went out of his way to foster genuine connections to people before and after his music started to gain traction. He always had star quality. Everyone from the most important person in the room to a janitor walking through would be drawn to him, and he'd engage with everyone in a way that really stuck. She always mentions that he was just a really sincere, deeply felt person. He randomly views my Instagram stories. According to a story in the net, he does this a lot. He said me looking at people's stories, answering people or sending them a quick message. It's always coming from a place of love. I went to college with Joe Kiriaka Steve Harrington in Stranger Things. He was my college boyfriend's sweet mate and just the nicest guy. His hair has always been dreamy and amazing. Last time I saw him was at a viewing of The Hateful Eight after we graduated, and he still made a point to come over and say hi. Edit. Spelling. The Poor Theater? I went to junior high with Norah Jones. She was the most sincere and serene person. She was fun to talk to, and she never gave a hint of who her father was. The night she won all those Grammys was very telling, that she hadn't changed a bit. I believe this. I've met her twice after her shows, and she was super nice, and took pictures and signed autographs. Once she had a little dog with her. I didn't expect someone as famous as Norah Jones to actually come out and meet fans after her show. But she did. My mom is friends with Johnny Knoxville's cousin. She met him once and had no idea who he was. She said he was nice and funny as all hell. She didn't realize until years later she'd even met him until I showed her one of his movies. From what I gather, he's a normal dude and pretty hilarious. My grandmother and mum were really good friends with George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley from Wham. They got invited to concerts and got to sit in special seats, etc. And a few years ago me and my family stayed with Andrew Ridgeley in his guest house in Cornwall for a weekend. But they seemed to me like they stayed really nice to my grandparents and mum. And Andrew Ridgeley was very kind to my family when we met him. I miss George so much. I wish he would have been the one to do the reunion tour with Queen. His version of Somebody to Love is spot on. Family friend of mine actually dated Kurt Cobain before Ms. Love. Apparently they broke up because he wouldn't get a job. Then a little while later he got famous. Can't finish the question for obvious reasons. I remember that story. He wrote about a girl for her to stop being mad on his unemployment. I knew Tom Holland at the time he did that Tsunami movie. We were not really friends, but he was so funny and friendly. It's important not to make Spider-Man masculine because he's a kid. As soon as you make him masculine, it's harder to relate to him if you are younger and are in high school. Greater than sign semicolon. He is just so pure and almost perfect for the Spider-Man role. IDK what it is about Tom Holland, but I swear there's something about him that just triggers every mothering instinct in my entire being every time I see him on T.V, YouTube, or in movies. There's this drive to wanting to put a sweater on him, cook and feed him food, wipe his face with a tissue, and tell him to get good grades, stay away from fast girls or boys, don't do drugs, make him go to mass, and offer him some quarters for the arcade. My own children should be jealous because this absolute stranger is my favorite child. Friend of mine was friends with Tom Hanks in high school and went to prom with him. He still writes her personalized day cards on one of his typewriters. I hope one day I'll be so rich and successful that I can afford multiple typewriters. Went to prom with Tom Hanks. I would put that on every job application. My mom dated Will Ferrell for a little while. He came round quite a lot and she said he was real down to earth and incredibly funny. However, afterwards they really just lost touch. So we never got to know how he personally changed. My mom says she's still like he used to be. My mom and dad still laugh about her dating him. Your mom dated the Gator? I knew Brett and Jermaine, Flight of the Conchords, back in the late 90s/early 2000s. And met Takeaway Titty a few times too. I was a big fan of his art at the time. There was one painting of someone in a bathtub that stuck in my head. I knew Brett better than the others because he was in a reggae band with my good friend Barnaby. As far as I can tell, they are all exactly the same. I'm not jealous of anyone in this thread but you. Flight of the Conchords was the ducking greatest. Did Steve tell you that? Perchance, Steve. I went to high school with Emma Chamberlain. She was a huge bully in high school and pretty much a brat who thought she could get away with whatever she wanted before she got famous. Her parents were divorced, which led to them both always trying to be her friend and never actually parenting her. So they basically let her do whatever she wanted. When she said that people from her high school made fun of her because she was poor and that the parking lot was all BMWs and Range Rovers, I lost my mind because she was the bully in high school. And while the school definitely had some wealthy students, it was mostly a middle class crowd. My brother knows the guy that Squidward was based off of. Turns out that made him more bitter cause he was made fun of. Who knows if these are real, but they make for great reading while on the toilet. Morning shite crew checking in. Chris Hemsworth and his brother Liam. Both really good blokes before and after they became famous. I met Chris Hemsworth when he was only on Home and Away. My wife was a huge fan and we traveled halfway across the world for a holiday and went to the Home and Away set. She got a picture with him. I wasn't bothered. Now I'm telling everyone I met Chris Hemsworth. Wish I got that picture. Damn it. Edit. I will get my redemption one day, Thor, and get that picture with you. My best friend is cousins with Tyler Posey. She said he was a sweetheart before his Teen Wolf days, and he still is now. That makes me so happy. When I was younger I was obsessed with that show, and it's nice to know he's genuinely a great guy. I met him 2 years ago in Split, Croatia during World Championship. We watched the game together with some other actors from Teen Wolf over dinner and he really was the sweetest. My brother used to play basketball with a bunch of people in high school. Among those who would sometimes join in was Pete Davidson. My brother said he got ripped on a ton and no one really liked him. But that might just be because he wasn't great at basketball. My aunt had dinner with Keanu Reeves and other people before he did Matrix. When he came to Spain, she said that Keanu was very handsome and incredibly polite. Edit. I know that Keanu was famous before Matrix, but my aunt met him before he filmed Matrix. Also THX for the upvotes. A co-worker of mine met Daisy Ridley while on a backpacking trip. Got to know each other pretty well while traveling together. She told my co-worker that she wanted to become an actress. Looks like that panned out pretty well. They said Daisy was an absolutely lovely individual. How long ago was this, before Star Wars? I knew Robert Pattinson about 15 years ago. Nice guy. Friendly. A lot of fun to be with. He lived by himself in the center of Soho, London. In a tiny one-bed flat that I think he felt like the romantic vision of a starving artist. Or at least wanted to. He had a weird side. He'd say random, violent, depraved things. He was obsessed with Jack Nicholson. He never really gave a duck. He had confidence and he was always himself. And he knew he could be deliberately contradictory, and he used that as a personality trope. But he was a good guy. And I get the impression he's very comfortable with himself now that he has developed his career, that he acts very well, and that he can pick and choose his roles based upon what he wants to do and who he wants to work with. Twilight for him was always a means to an end, and I think he worked it very much to his benefit and didn't compromise himself. My 8th grade science teacher dated Bill Nye. Broke up with him because he didn't like kids. Hold up. My high school biology teacher dated Bill Nye too. Not sure why they didn't work out though. I find it hilarious that at least 2 of his exes became science teachers. Ironic. I went to high school with Mark Ruffalo. He was nice. He was one of those thespians. Our high school had an acting group that challenged the students to get out of their shell and do things in front of strangers, like introducing yourself as a wild fairy of the woods and presenting them with a flower. We didn't talk much, but like I said, he was a good guy. Nobody ever believes me when I tell this story, but when I was 15, I met Ariana Grande on Facebook. I was into flirting with random people back then, lol. We talked for a while, shared some jokes and rage comics. After about 2 months of occasional conversations, she made an update on her wall saying that she signed a contract with Nickelodeon, and then I saw her on Victorious. I was dumbstruck when it happened. I used to know someone who dated her. Can't ask them what she is like because I haven't spoken to him since he got somewhat famous. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more dank curated content from Crosspostable Reddit.